Good afternoon and welcome to the fifth concurrent session of the day, Psychology Software Demonstration. Our presenter today is Laura Shevlin of Hawkes Learning. If you have any questions for the presenter during the session, please feel free to enter them into the Q&A section at the bottom of the Zoom screen, and we will address them at the end of the talk. We're also giving away three $25 Amazon gift cards at the end of this session. To enter for a chance to win, click the link in the chat to enter your name onto the prize wheel. And on that note, I will hand it over to Laura.
Thank you, Joanna. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining. I think this is the last Hawkes demonstration session of the day, so I'm glad to have you here. Let me go ahead and get started, and I'll share my screen. All right. Perfect. Well, as Joanna said, today's presentation is a psychology software demonstration. For anyone who I haven't met yet, my name is Laura Shevlin, and I'm a senior courseware representative here at Hawkes Learning. Today's agenda, I'm going to give you a little background on Hawkes and who we are as a company, especially for folks who are not as familiar with Hawkes or have not had a chance to work with us quite yet. I'm going to walk through some of the ancillary resources that come along with our Introduction to Psychology title, and then we'll switch gears over to the software side and walk through a demonstration of the student account and what that looks like from the student perspective. Just to give you a little background on Hawkes and who we are as a company, I did want to put up these core values, kind of the three pillars of what we stand for here at Hawkes: affordability, support, and then mastery learning. So first and foremost, making sure that all of our textbooks and resources are both affordable and accessible for students. We do this a couple of ways. So with this title specifically, we did partner with OpenStax in an effort to keep costs low for students. We then used our content team here in-house at Hawkes and contributing instructors from across the country who teach these courses to really beef up that content, make it more up to date, and just more user-friendly and readable for students. We also offer lifetime licensing for all of our products, meaning that student access codes never expire. So these are tied to students for life, and that includes all new additions and updates. So if a student ever needs to drop or retake a course, they won't need to repurchase that access code. Next thing I wanted to mention here is our support. All of our training and support is free and unlimited here at Hawkes. We want to ensure that as you're transitioning to Hawkes, a new system for both you and your students, you both feel supported and you're able to have a go-to person to ask questions and make sure that you get those questions answered, not just at the beginning of the semester, but all throughout the implementation process. We do have a phone policy here at Hawkes Learning that when someone's calling in, a live person will answer the phone within the first 4 rings. So always make sure that someone's available to speak with you if and when those questions come up. And lastly, we have mastery learning. And this is a big differentiator between Hawkes versus the other systems that are out there. I'll definitely touch on this a bit more when we hop into the courseware itself, but I did just want to note that all of the Hawkes homework lessons are mastery based within our platform. The next thing I wanted to touch on are the different purchasing models that we offer. The first 2 columns here are pretty standard. So the first one here is direct from bookstore. If your students typically get their course materials from your bookstore on campus, just know you always have that option within Hawkes. And then we do have a direct from Hawkes option directly from our website. So if students do want to purchase directly from Hawkes, they can. I will say that doesn't include any print materials. So that is just for software and ebook access codes. And then the last column here is a little bit different, and it's for inclusive access programs specifically. And if you're sitting there thinking, you know, my school doesn't do inclusive access, no worries. You can stick to these 2 standard columns here for standard purchasing. But we do work with schools that have inclusive access programs set up where course materials are rolled into student tuition. The biggest difference with this purchasing model is going to be, instead of a lifetime access code for the software, it will be a singular semester, since students are paying for that singular semester when it's rolled into their tuition. If you have any questions about what this would look like for your students and you're currently considering Hawkes, just reach out to your Hawkes representative. We're happy to walk you through, and even contact the bookstore ourselves just to make sure everything is good to go as far as your students purchasing the Hawkes materials. The next thing I wanted to touch on is a guided notebook that does come along with this course. The guided notebook is an optional print resource that you can choose to pair with the Hawks homework platform. It's essentially a work text for students, and I've included a couple screenshots of just sneak peeks of what that guided notebook looks like on the inside. Essentially, it will walk students through what we call the learn mode of our platform, where all of the instructional content is contained for the course, and it will prompt students and guide them through that note-taking process. So as you can see here, there's fill in the blanks, there's on your owns for students to immediately start applying some of these concepts. Some of these are short answer questions or give the opportunity for students to test themselves on the knowledge of these concepts. We have psychology and you sections where it relates these psychology concepts to students' everyday lives and has them, elaborate and share their own personal experiences. We have say it in a sentence to help with key term memorization, and then key term exercises at the end of every section there. If you're curious about looking through the guided notebooks that come along with this course, we're always happy to ship a review copy your way. And again, a Hawks rep is happy to kind of walk you through how this pairs with the matching homework platform. We do see a lot of schools that will use the guided notebooks as a way to almost require the readings before students are coming to class. So, doing things like notebook checks or having students swap notebooks to check their work or even share answers with the class is one thing that I've seen instructors do just to kind of hold students accountable, especially if you're wanting them to read prior to coming to class. Here's just another screenshot. There's a key term crossword puzzle that we've included in there as well. The next ancillary resource I wanted to touch on are chapter projects, and these come along free of charge with the Intro to Psych title. These do align with every chapter within the Introduction to Psychology book. And so if you're looking to incorporate more project-based learning into your courses, feel free to use these projects. You can, of course, assign them as a group work for students or individual work outside of class time, but these are just additional assignment types that we offer for instructors, kind of outside of the realm of the Hawks homework lessons and the different assessment tools that we have within the platform. Just wanted to touch on some additional resources here. I know I just mentioned those chapter projects for instructors. We also have PowerPoint slides and lecture slides for you if you want to customize those and use them for any lecture style courses. We also give you as the instructor access to our full question bank to build out any type of assessments, tests or quizzes, worksheets for students. So you do have access to that full question bank if you wanted to pull from those questions and create any additional assignment types. Now, as far as student resources go, in addition to that lifetime access, we do give students error-specific feedback as they're working through practice questions. So our system does detect when students are making a mistake to pinpoint feedback for them and give it to them in real time. I'll show you how this works when we jump into the software itself. We also have step-by-step tutoring and helpful hints built into our software. So if students are working on Hawks outside of normal classroom hours and feeling stuck, they do have the option to get those helpful hints to kind of guide them in the right direction. And then students can also create self-created practice tests or study guides in order to help prepare for any upcoming assessments within the course. So this is really nice, if students know what topics and chapters and lessons will be covered on that next test or quiz in your course, they can actually go in and create these study guides for themselves without you having to, build anything on the instructor side. Now let's go ahead and toggle over to the student experience, and I will show you the matching homework platform. Let me just refresh my dashboard here. I've been sitting stagnant for a little while. So what I've pulled up here is the student side of the Hawks homework platform. So this is what students would see when they're logging into Hawks and going about completing those Hawks homework lessons. Since we are relatively new to the psychology world, I will give you a full tour of the dashboard here before we hop into a homework lesson, just to show you the capabilities of the Hawks homework system. Here on the top left-hand side of the screen is our grades tab. This is where students can access their accurate and up-to-date grades with Hawks. We do sync directly with a couple different LMS systems, so Canvas, Blackboard, D2L or Brightspace, and Moodle. If you wanted to set up that grade and roster sync, that's completely an option. That way all of your grades from Hawks are syncing over and housing in your LMS system. We also have student single sign-on options available as well. So if you wanted students to access Hawks through your school's LMS system, it will kind of bypass the account creation process and just streamline where everything is housed. That LMS integration doesn't cost anything additional and it's completely optional. So you can always go the standard route of having students just log into our platform from our standard website. Jumping to the right here, we have our ebooks tab. This is where the online version of the textbook is housed. And this does come included with a student's purchase of an access code. So at minimum, they always have the digital version of the text included with that software piece. We do have bundling options for other printed resource like the guided notebook or the physical book if that's your preference for students to have. Jumping to the right of the screen here, this is our notification bell. This will show students any upcoming items due today or overdue here. Next to that, we have our envelope, which is our internal messaging system. This will allow you to send out course announcements or messages to your students or class sections overall. And then this drop-down menu here, just a few things that I wanted to point out. First and foremost, we have our live support. This is where students can always get in touch with a Hawks specialist here through our 24/7 live chat. So in addition to that phone policy that I mentioned earlier, we do offer this 24/7 chat for both students and instructors. If a student is ever up late at night outside of those regular phone hours working on homework and has a Hawks related question, they can still get in touch with us here through this live support chat. Below that, we have a training video, which is just a good resource for students to get kind of acclimated to a new system, and we'll introduce them to the courseware and where all their resources are housed. A lot of instructors will show this video on the first day of class just to introduce students to something new, if it's something that they're incorporating into their classes for the first time. I will say we do offer student trainings as well. At the beginning of every semester, we offer a 2-week-long student training series with our training and support team. They host a number of sessions just introducing Hawks to students and walking them through account creation and taking questions from students. So students can join really at any time that works for their schedule during that training series, and they can get their questions answered by a member of our training and support team. And then lastly, we have a give feedback when prizes tab here. So this is just a fun way for us to encourage feedback from the folks who are in here using our system every single day. So students at any point can submit feedback to us here, and we do monthly gift card drawings for students. So that is the dashboard here. And then down below, I'm able to see any courses that I'm enrolled in at Hawks and my school instructor and section here, as well as a mini to-do list of my upcoming assignments. As a student, I can click directly on these assignments from this dashboard or click on this blue view course button, which will take me to my to-do list. And that's just a breakdown of all of my upcoming assignments and due dates here. You'll notice by default, they're broken out by due date. So due today, due within a week, and due later. I always like to show this page just to mention that it is customizable for instructors. So if there are chapters or modules that you want to break these out in or change these headers, you can always do that as well. I'm going to go ahead and jump into a homework lesson here to show you what that looks like for students. So clicking on any lesson within Hawks is going to bring you to this same landing page here, our recommended learning path. So all of the Hawks homework lessons follow this same learn, practice, and certify modes. And that's not just for psychology, that's consistent across all of our titles, even for calculus or economics, students are still navigating through these 3 modes here. So I'll pop into each to show you what it looks like from the student perspective. So the learn mode here is a multimedia presentation of the textbook. It contains all of the relevant content and definitions that are found within the print book as well as the ebook, just broken out into smaller, more bite-sized chunks for students. So these 16 pages here are what students need to read through in order to be prepared to answer the upcoming homework questions for this particular lesson. Now we do have some interactive features kind of sprinkled throughout the learn mode here. The first thing you'll see on this page here is a flash forward that links out to our verified Quizlet set. So just wanted to mention that we are verified through Quizlet for all of the key terms for each lesson. So if students do want to kind of skill and drill those vocab terms, they can use those verified Quizlet sets where everything's been checked for accuracy. We also have these on your owns where students can immediately start applying some of these concepts and check their work along the way. And then you'll see things like reflection questions and group activity suggestions scattered throughout the learn mode here as well. Just know as instructors that you can pull these different elements contained within the Learn mode and incorporate them into class time, no matter what the format of your course looks like. So if you're teaching an online course and you wanted to pull some of these reflection questions, you could structure discussion posts around them and have students respond to one another. In class, if you want to just pull up the Learn mode and call out to students in order to generate some meaningful classroom discussion, you could use these reflection questions or those group activity suggestions to kind of divide students up in person. We also have a concept video here. This will just highlight the concept that's being presented here, and these are made in-house here at Hawks. So some great video resources, as well as here on the top left-hand side of the screen, you'll find a watch button. This will pull what we call a lesson level video, which is an overview of all of the content here of these 16 pages in video format. So these are more lecture style videos for students that they can watch, before or after they're reading through the content here of the lesson. And every lesson does have a matching lesson level video there as well. I will say everything in the Learn mode is customizable for you all as instructors. So if there's anything in here that you don't necessarily cover within the course, you can always hide screens as a whole, but you can also build in your own content here. So this split screen is just an example. If you had your own YouTube video or just definitions or examples that you've kind of used over the years and want to incorporate into your class, you can always add in that content here so that students aren't just seeing the Hawks content, but what you've customized and built in as well. Now I'm going to go ahead and head out of Learn and head into that next recommended mode of practice. And practice is exactly what it sounds like for students. It's a penalty-free environment that they can jump in and start answering these practice style questions before they're going straight to the actual homework portion of the lesson. So we are giving students these algorithmically generated questions here to work through, as well as access to these learning aids down here at the bottom of the screen. So I'll walk through each of those as well for students. First, we have our skip button. So if a student wants to skip over a question and really just focus on particular question types that they're struggling, they can skip around here. We also have a tutor button. So if a student gets to a question and just has no idea where to begin, they can always access tutor here, which will bring them to a helpful hint. Hints will usually contain relevant definitions or examples for students, or even ask students to ask themselves a set of questions to really put some of these concepts into perspective for them. Now, if something is still not clicking from this tutor and hint screen here, students can toggle back to Learn where that content is covered in the Learn screen, or click on Solution to see a fully worked out solution and the correct answer there. So they do have that full solutions manual just to check their work on any correct answers. I'm also going to show you the type of feedback that students are getting as they're answering questions here within the practice mode. So this one here is a good one to show. This is a click to select question. It's asking me to identify an element within this passage in this particular instance, which sentence best illustrates the just world hypothesis. So I'm going to go ahead and pop an answer in. And I want to get this one wrong just to show you this explain error feedback that we've built into our platform. So right away, when a student gets a question incorrect, it'll flag it for them. But as a student, I can always click on explain error and it'll pull the question that I was just presented with and not only tell me that my answer was wrong, but why my answer was wrong. Keep in mind, our system has artificial intelligence that anticipates and diagnoses these common student errors that are made here in the platform in an effort to stop students in their tracks right away when they do make a mistake and let them know exactly where they've gone wrong. So as you can see here in this particular instance, my answer was incorrect, but it goes on to tell me why. So it's because it describes the life circumstances of Brian and Dallas rather than describing a belief about the world. So in real time, as I do make a silly mistake, I can go back to practice, click try similar, and get a new version of that question type to continue working until my performance improves. We always say that this explain error feedback is the type of feedback that you would hope to give your students if you were able to sit down with every single one of them and work through these practice questions with them. The last one here is our send to instructor button, which is an optional feature that you can turn on or off for students. It basically allows students to take a screenshot of a question and send it to you directly If there's something they're really struggling on, or maybe want to talk through during office hours, it's really nice to see the exact version of the question. I will say every question type has up to 50 different versions of itself. So you can see exactly what they're looking at and intervene right then and there. At any point, students can head out of practice and enter that final mode of certify. And so certify is the credit-bearing portion of the 3 learning modes. So this is what students are completing for a grade within the course. A couple of things to note about the certify mode here. First, the question types are very similar to what students just worked through in practice. So we're not going to throw them for a loop when they finally get to the actual homework portion. If they did spend any time up front in practice, it certainly wasn't wasted. It'll ultimately better prepare them for what's coming their way in certify. I will say it's all algorithmically generated, so they're getting new versions of those similar question types here in certify. Now, the biggest key difference between practice and certify, you'll notice down here at the bottom of the screen, is that we've removed the learning aids from the lesson here. Students can no longer access that tutor, skip, or try similar button. And ultimately, we just want to hold them accountable while they're in here completing the Hawks homework lessons to be able to stand on their own and ultimately prove knowledge of the concepts that they're reading and learning about here. At any point, we don't want them to become overly reliant on those learning aids that we provide to them within practice. And so here we're asking them to stand on their own and answer these questions to the best of their ability. Now, we do consider these to be lower stakes assignments, so it's totally fine if students are making mistakes here or there. That's what the homework is for. We just want to be very transparent with them right then and there. If there is a concept they're struggling with or a question type that they're constantly missing, we want to tell them now so that they can go in and remediate before they get to the higher stakes assignments in the course, like the tests, the quizzes, and the papers. And we don't want that to be the first time they're finding out what it is that they don't know within the course. Now, within Hawks, we do use a mastery-based approach. And I think I mentioned that earlier. So what that looks like here is we're asking students to reach a mastery level here at around 80% in order to achieve credit on their homework. And by credit, I mean 100% in the grade book once they've reached or exceeded the mastery level of the lesson here. So as you can see here in this particular set, we've given students 10 questions. Of those 10, they have a little bit of wiggle room. So that 2 inside the red heart indicates the number of questions that they can miss, and they're still within that mastery threshold of the lesson here. Now, if a student dips below and misses a 3rd question in this set, our system's going to take them out of certify and place them back into the practice mode with a custom set of questions based on what they just missed. So there is that adaptive remediation built into the system, allowing students to go back to that penalty-free environment, really focus on the question types that they're struggling on. Of course, they can access the learning aids and the error-specific feedback that we just walked through. Now, at any point, students can come back in and attempt that certify lesson again. We're never going to block them out of certify or take off points when they dip below the mastery level. They truly have unlimited attempts when it comes to answering these questions and ultimately scoring that 100% in the grade book once they reach the mastery level. Now, heading out of the Hawks homework lessons, a couple of other things I wanted to share with you within the student platform are housed under these separate tabs. So as you can see here, we have a web test tab. So like I mentioned earlier, as an instructor, you're able to build out any tests or quizzes or other assessments that you want for students. And you do have access to our full question bank to do that. I will say we do have a question builder tool as well. So if you like to build out your own questions, you always have that option within Hawks and can assign it directly here through the courseware. Another thing I wanted to share here is this practice web test feature where students can come in and create their own practice tests or study guides. So I'll show you what this looks like for students. Essentially, they can come in and name that practice test. They can set the number of questions that they'd like. They can even time themselves if that's something that they're struggling on. And then here they have access to all of the different chapters and lessons within the course. So if they know that chapter 1 and 2 tests will be comprised of these 4 lessons here, they can add those in and click start, and it will generate a practice test for them to work through. One thing that's really nice about this practice web test platform here is that it looks very similar to an instructor assigned web test. So if you are creating tests and assigning them through Hawks, it will look very similar as far as student navigation and what this looks like on their end. So they can skip around here just as they would with a pencil and paper exam. I'm going to go ahead and just answer a couple of questions here or there try not to cringe at any of my answers here, but I just wanted to show you the feedback that students are getting when they're submitting these practice tests. Answer maybe one more here on the tail end. Perfect. And then students can also have the time here on the top right-hand side of the screen if that's ever a point of anxiety for them as well. But for today's time purposes, I'll go ahead and submit my practice test here and just show you what it is that students are seeing when they're submitting that test. So here on the left-hand side is a breakdown of their overall performance in this pie chart. So the percentage of questions they got correct and incorrect, just giving them a good idea on how well they would have performed if you created that test and assigned it to them. And then here on the right-hand side, a breakdown of their performance by lesson. So it's showing me each lesson I used to compile and create that practice test. Visually as a student, I can see those areas of green, the questions that I got correct. And of course, the areas of red where I might want to dedicate more study time to. As a student, I can not only see those areas of red, but I can go ahead and click into them. And it will generate more practice questions for me to work through within that corresponding lesson. So just the idea here of giving students as much practice as they need in order to improve their performance and ultimately prepare them for the higher stakes assignments within the course. I can head out of practice here and hop into another lesson from that bar chart, or I can go in and retake or review this practice test. Now, the last thing here that I wanted to share on the student side of things is this materials tab. Of course, if you have any additional resources or things for your course that you want to upload into the Hawks platform to create a material library for students here, you can do that on the instructor side. So if you have lecture slides, an online version of your syllabus, our psychology companion site is linked here. That's where all of those chapter projects are housed. And some of our video resources. You can absolutely customize this to be whatever you'd like for students. Now, I know we have quite a few minutes left here, so I am going to share some of the reporting tools on the instructor side of things. So let me pull back up my PowerPoint here. And so I always tell instructors to think of the student side as the front-facing piece of the Hawks software, and then think of the instructor end as the back end. So it's where you're doing all of these customizations and really, customizing that course to be what it is that you're envisioning. And it's also where all of the reporting and analytics are for the course. So you can, of course, see all of the course insights, time on task data, where students are spending their time within the Hawks courseware. How many attempts is it taking them to complete those Hawks homework lessons? You can really see all of that. And I always tell instructors, we have so many reporting tools within the Hawks software. We certainly don't expect instructors to utilize all of them, but if you are hoping to measure something within your course, or you have this goal in mind for your course, chances are there's already a report that's kind of running and compiling that data in the background for you. And we're always happy to help you pull that. So if you're looking for, student success rates or time on task data, chances are, there's already a report within Hawks that you can go to with that pulled for you. These screenshots are from one of my favorite reports within Hawks called our assignment reviewer tool. And so this tool will help you to spot any red flags, or will give you ample intervention points for your students before it's often that too late point, right? So you want to check in on student progress as they're moving through the lessons. And you can also take a look at which questions they're missing. And is it just an individual student missing those questions, or is it your entire class section overall? So here, this left screenshot here is just the first thing you see when you pull up that tool, our submission status bar graph. So kind of a bird's eye view of your class section overall, but are my students completing their Hawks homework lessons, and are those being done on time, late, or overdue? So you can see that overall class section data there, and click into individual lessons to check on individual student progress. You can see the number of attempts they've taken on those homework lessons and how long they individually spent in those learn, practice, and certify modes. So that's a great tool to check in on as well. If you do have a student who's struggling to certify in a specific lesson, you can take a look at that time on task data to see if they're using their time wisely, or are they just kind of spinning their wheels within certify over and over again. Here on the right-hand side of the screen is our analytics tab within the assignment reviewer tool. This will show you commonly missed questions among your students. And one thing that's my favorite about this analytics piece here is that there's no actual student data that's visible on this screen. So it really is just all about those commonly missed questions. And so this is something that you could pull up in class and share with the class, or even take a screenshot of to say, you know, whoa, 30% of you all missed question 1 on last night's homework lesson. Let's go ahead and dedicate, you know, these first 5 minutes of class time to going over that concept and seeing where the disconnect is. So again, this will give you great intervention opportunities and will kind of trigger red flags if there are any for your students. That way you can really tailor class time to covering some of those topics that there might be confusion on. A couple of our other reports here, we do have a search by criteria report. This allows you to pull grading information and activity level and filter out students. And one thing that's really nice about this report here is that you can save your filters. So if this is something you want to run every week or bi-weekly, you know, you can run it at any point to filter out and check on student progress. You can also use these filters in tandem with one another. So if you wanted to filter out based on activity levels, so students who haven't logged in for a certain number of days, also paired with students who have a certain grade between a certain range, once you filter that out, you'll see a list of students appear who meet that criteria. And one thing that's really nice about this report is that you can check this box here and send them all a message at once. It'll blind copy each one of them. So they'll think, you know, you're just reaching out to them. And you can, you know, offer intervention, you know, come by my office hours this week. So it looks like you're at risk in my course of not passing. And then the last one here is our web test objective report. So this is a report where you can actually tie course objectives to any web test or quiz questions. So if you do take the time up front to put in those objectives and tie them to the questions, once you set that up, you can run this report at any time to check in on how your class section is doing overall in meeting those course objectives. We do have a number of schools who use this report for accreditation purposes, or even to compare class section to class section to see how well they're progressing through a coordinated course. So I did want to share that one here. And I think that's all I had to share today. I really enjoyed, you know, showing you all the Introduction to Psychology platform. We are relatively new to the psychology world. We've been here about 2 years or so. And so if you're curious about Hawks or would like to take a look at our intro title to explore further, just let us know and we're happy to, you know, create your own access or provide you with review copies. And I'm happy to take any questions at this time as well.
All right, well, thank you so much, Laura. We do have a few questions here, and it looks like we also have a hand raised in the audience. So if you do have a question or anything to share, please feel free to enter that into the Q&A box at the bottom of the Zoom screen. All right, so first question we have here is, what LMS systems do you integrate with?
Good question. So all of the major ones, so Canvas, Blackboard, D2L, Brightspace, or Moodle. I will say if you're using a lesser known LMS system like Genzabar, we still do have Hawks users that are using Genzabar. You basically just export your grades from the Hawks side and upload into Genzabar. So it's you know, not a direct syncing process, but it is really seamless and you can easily get those grades over to your LMS system.
Perfect, thank you. Next question is, what is the licensing structure at Hawks? Would you be able to do a quick recap of that and maybe pull that slide back up?
Yep, let me get that pulled up here. And so there are really 3 options. And if your school is in a unique scenario, again, this is a great thing to just chat through with your Hawks rep and we can get in touch with your bookstore directly. So here is that Hawks purchasing model slide. The standard way is to do it direct from bookstore. So, you know, just the traditional route of having students go down to the bookstore and purchase those Hawks materials. That one kind of covers you in all areas here. And then you have the option of direct from Hawks. So you can purchase those access codes direct from the Hawks website. I will say that is for access codes only. So no printed materials bundled in there. Bundled materials will be the best to do through the bookstore because they can stock all of that. The last one here is inclusive access. And so this is for schools who already have an inclusive access program in place where they're rolling course materials into student tuition. So students aren't necessarily going down to the bookstore to purchase themselves. They're paying for the course materials up front. And the biggest difference between this model and the first two is that licensing structure. So this one here is a singular semester access code, where the other two are lifetime. And if you have any questions about which one you fit into or what that would look like for your students, again, just please ask. We work with so many different bookstores and there's all kinds of setups out there, but chances are we can work with you and we'll make sure everything is good to go.
All right, thank you for covering that again. We do have another question here. Would you mind showing the slide where students can generate their own study tests again, please?
Oh yeah. Let's see. Well, this one here had it on self-created practice test on the student resources. If you want to take a screenshot here just to see, or did you want me to actually pull up the software?
I think since we have a few minutes, if you want to go ahead and pull up the software, that might be beneficial.
Yeah. So it's found here under this web test tab on the student side. So then you toggle over to practice web test, and then you can click create new. And you can create as many as you'd like in here. And as you can see, that last one I just did saved for me. So I can go back and review any of my previously made practice tests. And so from here, then students can name their test, and then they can toggle over to any chapter or lesson and add those in order to create that practice test. So that'll be found under the student side under that web test tab.
All right, thank you. And then one more question here. Again, feel free to keep sending those into the Q&A if you do have any. What resources do you offer for instructors?
Yeah, so we have some instructor resources. On that slide here, I mentioned a couple. So we have those chapter projects and lecture slides available for instructors. And then we do have access to our full question bank to build out any type of assessments or worksheets for students. I will say our training and support team is a huge resource here at Hawks as well for instructors. We never want you to feel like you're training yourself and then training your students on this new system. We have a ton of training resources that we can provide you with as well to make sure that you're confident and moving forward and implementing a new system as well as your students. Like I mentioned before, we have that student training series. That's a 2-week-long series just to make sure students are ready to go for the semester. And every school that adopts Hawks is assigned a training and support rep here at Hawks to have as a go-to person or team to ask questions.
All right, well, thank you so much, Laura. That's just about all the time we have for this afternoon, but thank you again for all that valuable information you shared with us. If anyone has any remaining questions, feel free to stop by the Hawks virtual booth to speak with a member of our Hawks team. And now it's time for the giveaways. So each winner today is going to receive a $25 Amazon gift card. So we'll go ahead and get started with that. So we'll spin for our first winner. And that will be David Larwin. Congratulations, David. All right, we'll spin for our second winner now. And that will be Pam Garverick. Congratulations, Pam. And then we'll spin for our third and final winner today. And we have Feng Chen. Congratulations, Feng. Winners will be sending your prizes following the conference next week. All right, well, that concludes the final concurrent session of the day and our conference. On behalf of everyone at Hawks Learning, thank you to our presenters and attendees for being a part of IES 2022. Recording of this year's sessions will be provided in the coming days. I'm now going to paste a brief survey on your overall experience at IES. We would love for you to take a minute and send your feedback. If you haven't already, don't forget to swing by the exhibit hall to say hello to the Hawks team, view a quick 5-minute demonstration, and be entered to win the hourly giveaway. Your choice of a 6-month subscription to Audible, 1-year subscription to Disney Plus, or a $100 Amazon gift card. The booth will remain open until 6 p.m. Thank you again and for joining us for IES 2022.